Yes, welcome. My name is Allan Højberg. I work for Aruba, a Hewlett Packard enterprise company. I'm here today to tell you a little about one of the things that also have made HP acquire Aruba. We made a decision to acquire Aruba about 9 months ago. And one of the things that HP was lacking was the broadness, so to speak, of vision that Aruba has around several different items. One of them being Internet of Things and the rise in mobility, so to speak. I've been with HP for 6 years, and prior to that I ran the networking department for GN Great Nordic for about 5 years. And looking back at that time, I can see that we are definitely heading into some real challenges when we have to defend the network with these new paradigms that's going on right now. I used to be from HP. Now I work for Aruba. So all of the networking division inside HP has become Aruba. We still have a lot of the products and so on that we still sell are still some of the HP product, but mainly all the wireless and a lot of the software solutions we're going to be discussing here today are from Aruba. As a note to that, the new CEO of Aruba is actually the old CEO of Aruba. So we brought him in and made him the manager of the whole division. So the rise of the Gen Mobile. This is a picture of the same event with 8 years difference. It's the the introduction of the new Pope. One taken in 2005 and the other one taken in 2013. It's very clear for this picture that the world is changing. Now you can say everybody feels, we have the same here at the event where there are Twitter, people are posting things. All of a sudden the whole IT part of it is very changed depending on what we did previously. We all expect today that when we take our cell phone or our laptops or whatever, we all expect to get a good solid connection, whether it's on 3G, 4G, or whether it's on wireless. So as consumers and users and employees and companies, we expect that just to work. And we do not normally, you can say an employee in a company is not going to worry too much about how it works or the security around how it works. But that's one of the things as companies that we really need to pay attention to. Because if we don't pay attention to it, it is going to make a big difference in how we secure our networks. Hang on. Sorry. So, I mean, smart devices and mobile are becoming the new normal. We are seeing more of them. I'm sure many of us will have smart devices at home. I know my new TV has a built-in Android operating system, and I put it on the network. But I mean, if I think about it, it's a new device on my network at home. Can I really trust this device? I mean, could there be bad code in there? Could there be a backdoor? No, it's a Sony TV. I trust Sony. But I mean, they could have small modules of software. I mean, in theory, you could be even that when I go into the Android on my Sony TV and install a new app, can I trust the people who write this app? And am I really thinking about the security when I'm doing that? Now that it's not just my cell phone anymore, where you can say I might have pictures that might be vulnerable for attacks, or somebody might steal my pictures. We've heard around that a lot with a lot of the different celebrities who's had their accounts hacked and so on. All of a sudden now I'm bringing in a device into my home network. I might install some nifty small apps on this TV because I can do that now. But that TV now actually has access to my internal network. It's on my wireless. It has access to my NAS drives. I've probably even given it access to my NAS drive where I have all my pictures and private documents. Am I thinking about the security when I do that? No. I think it's neat that I can do this because I think it's neat I can go onto my TV and point it down to a movie I have on my NAS drive and start streaming that to my TV. But could I be opening myself up to something I don't want? Yeah, I think so. So you can say, I mean, another example is of Internet of Things. even though it's a hype, it's a buzzword. I mean, Internet of Things is just a matter of we are starting to connect a lot of non-IT devices basically to our networks. At home, now I see Danfoss is starting to do some commercials around intelligent heating. So you get thermostats that are wireless and they connect to a little base station, and this base station then connects to the internet, basically to a cloud service. And then you can, on your phone, you can play around with your temperatures. You can, if you go away on vacation, you can go colder, hotter, or whatever. And these are just some of the things we're bringing into our home network. But in reality, you can say that home network, it's not that dangerous. We're probably not that a bigger risk of losing things at home. We might lose some bits of our privacy. But the problem is when we start getting that into our companies. I mean, today, I mean, it is already happening in companies. We get a lot of these devices into our companies today as well. I think everybody, for instance, has been dreaming around the meeting room without wires. Who doesn't want that? I mean, you come into a meeting room, and you have to present something. There is 10 meters of wires, which one uses the different plugs, and so everybody's dreaming around the wireless meeting room that just works. Barco has made a system called Click to View, I think, and basically it uses wireless. If you do the first mistake you can do is actually just install it and leave it alone, because then it's an AP in itself and it's going to disrupt your normal wireless traffic, or not disrupt maybe, but at least make less bandwidth for you. So it makes sense for a lot of people to put that on to your real wireless instead of having several wirelesses to support that. But then again, you're bringing things onto your network which are not really IT devices, and probably the guys bringing it might be the facility guys. They are not maybe equipped or thinking security the same way that the normal networking department in a company is doing. So in that way, you can say it's already happening whether we want it or not. Some of these devices we put in, they basically just need to communicate with the internet. And if that's what they need to do, then you can say the security around them is relatively simple. Some of these devices need to communicate with something internal on your network. They might need to be able to communicate to each other. So you can say the way that they communicate also has to do what security we have to put around them. Because of course you can say if you have a use case for a specific device, you want to make sure that it can do what it's supposed to do, but nothing else. So if it all of a sudden starts doing something that you don't think it should be doing, it would be really nice to be able to block it, or at least know that it's trying to do something that you don't want it to do. So basically you can say the way that we handle these kind of things today, traditionally, is that we will make, when we get a new service, could be some kind of a building controls, could be guest networks, could be so a new security zone that we need to implement in our network. The way that we typically do it today is that we make what's a VLAN separation. So we make a network layered on the network. So we are able to put new devices into another VLAN. So for instance, if a lot of companies today, they will have guest networks. And a guest network typically today is totally separated from the inside network, so to speak, of the company. So in that way, as soon as a guest comes onto the network, we assign him to a VLAN where the only thing he can do is communicate through the firewall out to the internet. Sometimes even where he's not hitting the corporate firewall, but he's just hitting a DSL connection into the internet. So we have him totally separated from what we do on the business side. The only issue you can say here is that what now if we are starting to bring some of these devices onto the network, but they have special needs? So for instance, you could say that one of the things that you would have a CTS system, for instance, controlling the heat in your building. So it would be a new system, fine system, where you would put in a temperature dial, and you would put in the wireless, or bring your, what do you call it, IoT, Internet of Things, thermostats for your radiators. The solution is quite simple. I mean, the Thermostat needs to communicate with an internal server, and then it comes back to the dials and to the valve, and it turns up and down the heat in the room. Quite simple, centrally managed, everything looks real good. And you as an IT administrator, you have to make that work in a secure way. So you think a little and you say, well, to be honest, I think I'll put that on my guest network because it actually has a lot of the same kind of criteria that my guest network has, because it's not supposed to communicate with anything else than one specific server. I can actually put that maybe on the guest network as well, if that's the case. And for good measure, on my guest net, I have what is called client isolation. Client isolation means that one client on the guest network is not able to communicate with any other clients on the guest network. Makes good sense because a guest will typically not want to communicate with the computer right next to him. In this system for the CTS, it might be the same. They just need to communicate with the server. So it's good. I don't have to do a lot of rework. I don't have to make a whole new VLAN supporting this new type of service that I'm bringing into the building. So that's fine. Then at some time later, maybe this guy who sold you this system, he comes back and he says, hey, I've got this new device. It's a small magnet. You put it on your window or external doors. And as soon as you open a door or a window, it'll communicate to the thermos that now you should not do anything. You should stop heating or you should stop cooling or whatever you're doing because the door is open. So we don't want to waste energy making a lot of heat into a room because the door is open or the window's open. And then you say, well, that's great. But the catch here is that this device needs to talk directly to the thermostat. It's not talking to that controller or the server in the server room. I mean, it's more talking to the valve. Now you have a problem because the guest network you had didn't allow that intercommunication, so you needed to do something else. So, I mean, so this kind of makes it so you need, then all of a sudden you have to have these many layers of networks to support these different applications in order to have a clean security and sleep good at night. And when you put wireless for that matter, because Internet of Things can be just as well wired as wireless, when you put that on top, in the traditional world today, you'll typically end up with having a lot of SSIDs for different services in your company. The problem with that is that it brings down the total amount of wireless traffic that you can do on your network. So it's a really bad idea. So, and also you can say that you have to make sure that these networks that we have here, that they're all kept apart. And even if you have a larger company where you have what is called a routed distribution layer in your network, not to get too technical, but then you have to put on, you have to enable a new feature called VRF, which is layering that routing in different sections. And if you do that, then you have a lot of extra security you need to do because you have to make sure that all these entities are not able to communicate with each other. So it just becomes a lot of work, and it just multiplies. So every time we get a new service, we might need to make a new VLAN. Sorry. The way we typically handle these systems today, then when we want to authenticate the different devices, is typically through standalone systems. I mean, we typically have a radio server for validating Active Directory users on the wireless, so the corporate inside users. We typically have guest portals to validate the guests coming into the building. We typically have maybe servers that validate administrators getting access to network devices and so on and so on. But they're all pretty much standalone systems that maybe they communicate a little bit to each other, but they don't really integrate stuff. And basically they're all doing the same. They're giving some kind of an access to a system. So the main point here is really that as soon as this starts multiplying, then you can say then we have to start managing the users and the access in a different way. It's not going to scale if we do it the traditional way that we do it today. It's going to be too much work, and it's going to be prone with errors, because as soon as we start making more and more of these, you can say we're opening ourselves up to security holes that we don't really maybe don't fully see at the point of the time. So we have to get ready to do things differently, is basically the point here. So also you can say in the traditional world, we would typically know if you had a stationary PC, you would be running specific programs off that stationary PC. You would know it was Word, it was blah, blah, it was intranet, it was mail, stuff like that. And it's a little bit easier doing security around that. Now we're talking about Internet of Things and we're talking about mobile devices. All of a sudden you can say what you do on your cell phone is not going to be exactly the same as what you do on your desktop computer. So we're starting to see different applications running in the network at different times. So basically you can say when we have the mobile devices, we're going to be doing everything on the mobile devices. What we did on for instance, if you have a tablet, you'll be doing things you did on your phone, you'll be doing on a tablet. But things you did on your desktop, you might be doing on your tablet as well. So all of a sudden, we start having different use cases and new needs. While of course we can support, with the products that we have, we can support this layered model that I showed before with the different VLANs. So basically just putting users into the different VLANs. We're actually, I'm here to tell you about what we perceive as being the new way of doing this, and that's by using what we call user roles. So instead of just allowing access, what we actually do is when we validate a user, we give that user a user role. We put him into a role, and that role defines what he's able to do on the network. And then we can firewall or access policy, is maybe the better word, that role directly on the access point or on the wired switch ports. So in that way, in this scenario, we would, for instance, the fine small magnets for the doors, we would put, and the other IoT devices, we would put that into a user role. And then when changes come to the network, we just change that user role. And that way we can very easily, we can change the behavior of the network and not have to do all the extra security segments on top of it. So basically you can say we are firewalling the client at the edge when he comes into the network. So if a guest user comes onto the network, we could, in theory at least, we could actually put him on the inside network, but then allow putting him in a rule that says you're only allowed to communicate with the internet. That might be simplifying things a little bit too much, but that's technically very possible. In that user role, we can pretty much describe everything that user needs to be able to do. So it would be what he's allowed to access, the quality of service he's able to get on different applications, the bandwidth he's allowed to consume, the hours of the day where he's allowed to do different stuff. So in that role, you can say we're describing the whole part of the access. And that role can then be, enforced, both on the wireless and on the wired side. And we do support a great variety of products. It's not only our own products where we can support this, but we also do pretty much all the big vendors we can support this on. And the solution from us is our central policy manager, which is called ClearPath. I'll get a little back to that in 2 seconds. Typically by doing with the user roles, we can end up with having basically just two, how should I say? Hang on 2 seconds here. 2 SSIDs for the users, or for the company, sorry. One which is 802.1x, so the certificate ones that you typically will use as a corporate user. You open your laptop, magically your computer goes onto the wireless and you're secure. And the other one would then be an open SSID where you would pretty much just, everybody who's not presenting the certificate will get onto the open SSID. Then we can do different magic on the open SSID. Typically it would be that we will ask, either with a guest portal or something else, we will find out who the user is and put them into the appropriate role. The reason I got confused was I forgot to flip the slides, sorry. The same actually goes for when we're talking about another hype, so bring your own device or mobility in a higher category. So when all of a sudden people start wanting to, for some reason, either choose their own devices as an employee, what do you want to, we in Aruba, for instance, even though we're a Hewlett Packard enterprise company, we're allowed to choose whether we want to have a standard HP laptop or if we want an Apple. Actually, there's a big difference security-wise how you handle that, because the PC will typically be running Windows. We can put it into Active Directory. We can put a certificate on it, and so on and so on. And we've been doing that for many years. But when you get the Apple devices or any other non-Windows devices, the security model and enrollment model is quite different. But on the other hand, you can say we are back to the Gen Mobile where people are expecting to have that kind of freedom. We see a lot, for instance, in a lot of marketing departments where the people are so used to working with Mac that it's almost a requirement in them starting the company that they are allowed to still keep on working with a Mac. It's deep in us, right? I must admit, even though I go in, I'm big advocate for open standards because that's where I am, but I must admit I have an iPhone, I really like it. I have a hard time if I have to adopt to an Android because now I'm so used to the iPhone. So we all get habits. I guess that's the point. So anyway, let's say we have this guy in marketing. He wants to bring he's convinced his manager that he's allowed to bring his Mac to work because he can do magic with it. And all of a sudden, then the network department, again, you're back to the point, what do we do? This Mac, if it's a newer Mac, it probably doesn't even have an Ethernet plug, which means that you have to bring it onto the wireless. You can't really put it on the guest network because the guest network has access to nothing. It might be on that separate internet connection that we talked about. So all of a sudden your headache starts. You have to find out how can I enroll him? How can I put a 802.1 certificate on the machine and get him into my inside network? Well, again, for us, the solution here is ClearPath. In this case, it would be you put him on the guest network. As soon as he starts connecting to the internet, he will be prompted with a portal. He can either register as a guest, which in this case would not make a lot of sense. He could also register as an employee. So it will ask Active Directory directly. Using his credentials on the Active Directory, he would log on and he would be given a user role. This user role could actually specify that he's put on the inside network and he's also still put into this specific firewall rule. So we are saying that he's only allowed to go to XYZ because, I mean, this is a machine he's got from home, so we don't know if he's up to code on antivirus, patch levels, and so on and so on. So we could bring him into the network with a new role saying he's only allowed to go to the marketing file server or whatever that should be. So one way of handling it on top of the existing network. Remember, in this case, we haven't really touched the existing network. That is as it is today. We don't have to make a lot of changes to do these things. Excuse me. I don't even need my slides, apparently. Holy crap. Sorry. Yeah. Another thing that we can also do when we're talking about the bring your own device is we can also, and that works on the corporate PCs as well, we also have a system where we can do what we call health checking. So that means that we can do what's also called NAC, which is a thing everybody, a lot of companies have been talking about, where you go out and you actually qualify whether the machine has the adequate patch levels and so on, so on, so on, so on. We have a module built in for that. That's not easy, but it works on this solution. But it's not an easy task to do, and you really need to take that medicine before you want to do that. But we support doing it if you want to. It works. We have working customers with it, but it's not easy for those who've tried. And especially when we're talking about cell phones and mobile devices, bringing them onto your network, we can actually even do more. Because we have in ClearPath, our policy manager, we have integration to third-party products. So it could be, for instance, we can go pick up data from a MDM solution, so where you will typically have enrolled your company mobile devices in order to keep track of them and keep them up to date software-wise. And in there, we can get a lot of information around all the attributes, so to speak, around these different devices. What operating system, what applications are installed, have they been jailbroken, are they reported stolen? And we can use those parameters in reality to enforce our policy. So if it's been jailbroken, we might say, no, sorry, you can't come onto the network because we have no idea what you've done to your poor phone. And we can give him a nice note saying, well, please correct this. Apple's homepage is here, just, yeah. Some of the MDM devices, they also, MDM systems, they also have a method of finding out whether a device has been compromised. So if there's been, typically on an Android phone, if there's been a rootkit installed on the phone and different stuff like that. And we can detect it, and we can then appropriately say, well, sorry, your phone is not allowed on the network today, or tablet, or wherever it might be. in the case of the user using the AD credentials, one of the things the policy manager also does is it profiles the device. So it looks at everything around the device. It looks at what is called the DHCP request, and it looks at the MAC address, and it looks at a lot of different other behavioral things that the device does. And it uses that as a kind of a fingerprint signature. So if we have somebody who's just validated using AD credentials, for the short run of it, you can say we are just remembering the MAC address. But that MAC address is what we call spoofable. You can take that MAC address and you can type it into your own PC, and then for the system, it will think that that was this other guy who's already authenticated. But then we use the fingerprint on top of that, and we push the fingerprint on top, so it will still look at all the different other things. So for instance, for the IoT devices, we might very well approve them onto the network, into that specific role, using the MAC address, because they are what we call typically headless, which means that they can't authenticate to the network. But to heighten the security, then we will do the fingerprinting as well. So when they go on, we validate them using the MAC address. Then 2 seconds later, we look at what kind of fingerprint they made. And if that doesn't match the fingerprint that we did originally, we will not allow them on the network. That could be one policy, to be extra sure. Yeah. The joke around the MAC addresses is that if you have somebody who's running port security on your network, the first thing you'll do as a hacker is you will go in and you'll disconnect the printer, read off the back of the printer what MAC address it has, put that into your computer, plug your computer in, and you will typically be on the network. Using the policy manager here and the profiling, that's not going to be able to happen, because the printer has a very special signature when it's doing DHCP. It asks for a lot of specific options. These options are validated. Again, if the signature is not what it's supposed to be, you're not going on the network. Good. Again, for us, ClearPath is the solution that supports this. It's a multi-vendor tool again, so it means it works on Aruba, works on HP, Hewlett Packard enterprise products, and it works on Cisco, and it works on the vast majority of the vendors out there. On the wired side, we can support exactly the same, basically, as we can do on the wired side, which means that this would also be the tool you would use if you want to do real port security. So when you plug something into a wall socket in the wall, we will give you the user role, basically, that you need. We will give you the security zone that you need to be in. So if you're a corporate computer validating with a certificate, we will give you access to the inside network. If you're not, we might bring up a guest portal telling you to either validate yourself using your AD credentials or validate yourself as a guest and just have access to the internet. Again, as I said before, we have a set of open APIs which we call ClearPath Exchange, and they're able for ClearPath to communicate with a lot of external devices. So we are able to, for instance, to communicate with a large amount of firewalls, where we can tell the firewall which clients have been allowed on the network. So that means that you would be able to put up a rule in your firewall where you say you only allowed. For instance, with the IoT devices, we could say that as soon as a new IoT, these thermostats that I talked about earlier, as soon as one of those come onto the network, we will automatically make a rule in the firewall allowing that to communicate to whatever it needs to communicate to on the internet. So that means that if somebody just puts a device or hacks the device basically on the network and ClearPath haven't seen it, it's not going to get through the firewall because the rule for allowing it through the firewall has not been communicated. And the same way, we have systems today where we can, because ClearPath also has connection back in the system and sees all connected users to the system, we also have systems today where we're able to, the firewall is able to tell us this client seems like it's doing things it's not supposed to. It's been infected by botnets or whatever, sends a signal back to ClearPath. ClearPath can go quarantine that user or kick him off the network and send a message to the IT department. So basically, you can say ClearPath is it's a middleware device. So it's a big database that communicates with a lot of different databases for validating users. It has these open APIs where we can communicate with a lot of other systems. And then basically, you build a set of service rules on top of that, making the different policies. So in the way that if you are logging onto a wireless, the way we enforce the user role there is going to be in one way. logging onto an HP switch, it will be another way, and logging onto a Cisco switch will be a third way. And we support, of course, we have what is called radius dictionaries, so we know which way to communicate with all the different devices. Yeah, and another thing ClearPath gives you is visibility, because as soon as you put it onto the network, basically, and you start sending DHCP requests, you do what's called an IP helper, and you send a shadow or copy of all your DHCP requests up to the ClearPath server. It will start profiling all the devices on your network. And you will, within half an hour, 1 hour, you will get a pretty good picture of what devices you have on your network. So what hardware it is, so it's if an HP PC, a Lenovo PC, what operating system you're running, and so on and so on. And you will be surprised. You will see a lot of devices that you had no clue that you had on your network. So visibility is key as well for doing this. And almost bringing you back on time, I think. I will conclude for now. Thank you.